I think all of you can hear me well, right? Just to make sure.
Yes, inshallah.
Okay. Okay, so inshallah, today we are embarking on a very important topic course, this 2-day course, inshallah, about parenting and the issues that parents are faced with today in the 21st century. And I don't need to remind you that actually we just entered this century not that long ago, and so many things have changed already. So it is a new time, a new era with new challenges, and definitely new challenges for the Muslim Ummah, the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. And we find throughout the history of Islam that each nation, each generation had their challenges. Each generation had their challenges, right? So we find that we had the Mongols, we had the Crusaders, we had the fitna after the Prophet died. We had so many issues throughout Islamic history. We lost the Khilafah in the previous century, and so many things happened. I think that the challenge of the 21st century for the Ummah is without a doubt our children and the rapid changes that they're going through. We have passed through that. So all of us were born, most likely, I think, all of us were born the previous century, right? If you think about it, it's kind of weird, right? It's like we were born in the previous century, right? Everyone was born from you in the, not sure your age yet, but you know, like 70s, 80s, and so on, right? So in the previous century, we didn't have the challenges that they did. And due to that, the way we grew up was very different, and it had an impact on who we are today. No doubt, it had an impact on who we are today, right? So 21st century, I would say, is the parenting challenge. So what we're gonna try to tackle in this course, inshallah, over 2 days, each day about 2 hours. We'll take a break, usually in the middle, for about 5 to 10 minutes. And what we're gonna tackle, inshallah, are these challenges and how we can solve them from an Islamic perspective. So how we're gonna do that, I'm gonna, inshallah, lecture today for some time, and then I will have some discussion with you guys. I want it to be a bit interactive because I don't want to be theoretical. Most of my points will come from my personal experience and what I've studied and the counseling that I've been doing over the past 15, 16 years. Then by opening a discussion, I'll be able to learn more from some of the challenges that you are facing, especially here in Malaysia. There might be certain culture aspects that I might have not encountered yet. So this is very important. So what we're gonna learn, again, parenting issues, problems that we are dealing with today in the 21st century. How can we Muslims deal with them? How can we approach it? How can we invest in our children and make sure that they are in those children that we really want, and that they will fulfill the objectives of this ummah and be strong Muslims and continue to the generation after them and after and after and after and after. So that is something that we need to discuss today. And we will also talk about some of the fitan that we're faced with. So this discussion might turn a bit hot, all right, but it's important to do so we can actually target the problems that there are. If we're gonna be, if we're gonna censor, or we're not going to discuss and hit face first and head on some of the problems that we're faced with, we're not gonna be able to solve them. And that is one of the problems of the Muslim Ummah, is that when we are faced with taboo issues, then we tend to get a little bit, I can say the word shy, and we say it's not appropriate, it's not part of our culture, and so on. Yet these things stand. These problems are there every single day, right? These problems are there every single day, right? So try to, while I lecture, have a piece of paper with you, okay, and a pen, and see if you can just write something if you feel like you need to, And then you can, once I open the discussion, you can bring these points up. You might hear something that I'm saying that you might not agree with, or there might be a connection that you're making to something, an experience that you've had, and you want to share that with us, and you might want to take some advice. So write down what you want to discuss or what comes to your mind when you hear what I say. At the same time, if you have something that really, really is burning and you need to interject, okay, then just kind of, I guess, open the mic and say, I have a question, or I would like to add something. If it's really, really very important, that you have to say it at that time, so we don't get stopped too much, inshallah. All right. So, Bismillah, let us first and foremost start with renewing our intention that this is ibadah, this is part of our worship, because it's seeking knowledge. It is part of our worship and seeking knowledge to learn more about not only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but about ourselves and where do we position ourselves as humans in relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to our creator. We are the creation and He is the creator. Where do we stand in this equation? What do we have to do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created the spirits, jinn, and human beings except that they worship me. And Mufassirin talk very clearly about this ayah, that this is not about sitting in the mosque all the time. This is about living your life with a purpose. Pay attention here. This is the first key, statement. Living life with a purpose. And that is what we as Muslims try to do through Islam. When you leave Islam, when you actually leave Islam, you live life with a purpose. Your purpose is Allah. Is it just praying? No. Is it just fasting? No. But everything that you do in your life is for the sake of Allah. And when you can conceptualize that, guys, then you realize that life has a different meaning. A lot of people are struggling with this element right now. What is my purpose in life? And we'll get to it. You see that a lot of our youth and our children, our new parents, are struggling with this as well, because they weren't able to come to terms with this. They couldn't solve this problem. Right? So when you understand your objective in life, then life takes a whole different meaning. And psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, you will feel different. Your life will have a meaning. Imagine waking up every morning, guys. Every morning you wake up like you have a mission. Irregardless of your work, regardless of your pay, regardless of what you do. But the mindset, even if you are a security guard, a dishwasher, whatever it is, a doctor, a scientist, but you have a sense of belongingness, in the first place, to the Ummah of Muhammad. Sorry, what's this? Okay. Sorry, the messages, they distract me sometimes. If you can write down first, by you, inshallah, by hand, and then we can type them after. Because when it pops out on my screen, it distracts me. I'm a bit, one of my weaknesses, distractions. So, imagine waking up in the morning. Imagine waking up in the morning having an objective, a higher objective than just feeding your family and just fulfilling your job. Where you know that you're part, you have the sense of belongingness to the Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. An Ummah that is 3 billion strong. Yes, with our weaknesses, with our problems, with all these issues that we have, but it is still there. Right? We talked in the tafsir class about the Qibla. We're still all praying towards the same Qibla. We're still all praying in the same direction. We're still all worshiping the one Allah. Imagine, honestly, I want you to really conceptualize this. I want you to wake up in the morning as parents with the feeling that I can change the world. Yes, you can. One person. Yes, you can. It happened. The Prophet ﷺ changed the world. And we don't even have that responsibility. He started one man to give the message to everyone. We all have to do is just remember at least the 3 billion Muslims around the world, or whoever is within our scope, within our corner, that we can do it. So when you have that sense of purpose, waking up in the morning and that niyyah, everything becomes different. Your ibadah, your worship becomes different, right? And a lot of times sisters ask me this. You know, you guys, the men, go outside, you do this, you do that. You guys have certain things to do. And this was an Arab sister who was quite traditional and staying at home, cooking, cleaning, taking care of her children, doing something amazing. I believe that this is one of the greatest things that a woman can do in terms of priority. Islam does not forbid them from working. It allows them to work. Islam does not forbid them from education. It allows them to be educated. Islam does not forbid them from doing things. It allows them. However, there's a priority. And this sister understood that. She took the priority of being in the house, as the Prophet ﷺ said, this is the best place for a woman to pray in, this is the best place for a woman to stay in, to the point that the hadith says really that they are, subhanAllah, the word used is captives. It doesn't mean literally that, but it just shows that there's a lot of restrictions around women, much more than men. And Allah says, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنثَى, and the man is not like the female. Allah has given men certain responsibilities and women certain responsibilities. But this woman understood that. Her issue was that, how do I feel like I'm doing something? And when you look at the life of the Sahabiyat, the wives of the Prophet, the wives of the Sahaba, the female companions of the Prophet, we find their involvement in society. There's no hadith that you just like find them only, sitting and just doing nothing. No. There are a lot of women who were doing quite a lot, but again, priorities were there and there were the restrictions. Islam was number one, not Western philosophy, not let's be like men and the same as men, right? The whole liberal feminist movement today, where sadly, if you think about it, what's happening is that they are telling women to be men. They're telling you have to be like men. And that's sad because supposedly the whole movement is against men, right? So why would you tell women to be like men and push them to be shoulder to shoulder to that level? It's not like that. So this woman understood her priorities, dedicated to that, but she said, how do I feel? How do I feel like I belong to something? How do I feel like I matter and I do something and Allah is pleased with me? So the Sheikh said to her something very important. Says, it all takes the niyyah. It only takes the niyyah. And he explained with the evidence that a Muslim, when they make their niyyah, and he started with the hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And that's where I wanted to get right now, because every scholar, subhanAllah, when they start their books of hadith, they will talk about this hadith. One of the first hadith that you earn an ijazah in or you learn about is this hadith. Indeed, all actions are by their intentions. What does that mean to us in our concept? Well, it means that you or that sister as a woman who cooks, cleans, takes care of the children, it's tough. It's tough, I know that. That's why Fatima radiallahu anha came to complain to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And she was tired from serving Ali radiallahu anhu. Check the hadith. Don't take it because people don't like it. People don't like it when I talk about these things. So the Prophet, she said, I want a servant to help me. And the Prophet came to their house. He sat between them in their bed. Imagine that. Imagine the closeness, the beauty. And to the point that his knees touched him. And he told him, should I not teach you something better? To have patience. He said, say Subhanallah 33 times. Alhamdulillah 33 times. Allahu Akbar 34 times. Right? So, Subhanallah, we find here, she's asking for a servant. The Prophet is giving him dhikr. Because he didn't want people to get the wrong idea and to depend on others. He also showed that the wife has a certain responsibility, but he taught them that everything is for Allah. So the Sheikh put it in such a beautiful way, where he said that whatever you do, even if it is cooking, and of course it's not just cooking, cleaning, because sometimes it looks like the women are just maids. No. But whatever you do, the intention that counts is that you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whether you're an engineer, a doctor, a housewife, it doesn't matter. As long as the niyyah is there, you do it for Allah, you have a purpose. And you feel it when you wake up and when you do everything. Life takes a whole different meaning. It is a mindset. It is a mindset. Niyyah is a heart and mindset. And that's why the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Every deed is according to its intention. And of course, one of the greatest deeds that fall upon the responsibility of both women and men, but more on women than on men, but on both. On both, equally, but in different issues. Not equally in time necessarily, not equally in resources and so on, because the man will spend more. The woman will give more time. But it's about the responsibility. It's about raising children. So it is sadly one of the things that has been, as I said, when we started in the 21st century, neglected because of the dynamics of our lives, because of what is going on around our life and how our lives have been set up. We did not grow up like this. You know that. We did not have Zoom. Okay, the one thing that I used to remember is like ICQ chat or something. I don't even know what it was called, right? What we had at my time anyway. And like Yahoo, something, what was around that time. Not Zoom and meeting, online and whatnot, right? So it was different. It was a different era. But this job specifically, the one of raising children, of parenting, of education, this is one that counts so much. And it is so misunderstood. It is so destroyed actually because of a lot of influences from different perspectives, specifically Western imperial type of parenting. And we're going to try to understand that as well, compared to Islamic parenting, and inshallah in this course. So it's a problem, let us tackle it. As for myself, I'm a parent, of course, and I'm not perfect. I've learned a lot. I became a parent at a very young age, 23, right? And I got married quite early. So I've made a lot of mistakes. So now that I'm doing this class, actually it's good for me because I get to review some of the things. I get to discuss and hear from you. I'm not lecturing you. I'm trying to give you some theory and then discuss and see what we can do. I'm going to raise some of the issues and we're going to try to solve them together. I'm not just a solution to all these issues because I'm a parent, and to be honest, it's not easy. And all of you are parents, probably, or future parents, and you know that it's not easy. It is very, very difficult. We're going to understand why it's difficult. What are the problems? I mean, how come our parents did it? And their parents did it, and they did it quite well, right? When you look at your parents, you find their generations where it was quite different, isn't it? And when you look at your grandparents, if they're still alive, if not, rahimahullah, but you find that they were different. And we need to ask ourselves, what has changed? What are the dynamics that have changed? Why do we need to ask ourselves that? So we can understand where the problem is and how can we fix it. Should we return to certain things that were done before? Yes, I totally 100% believe in that. The problem is, my dear brothers and sisters, is that people of the 21st century think that you should only look forward. You have all these slogans that people throw out there. I only move forward. I never look backwards. These are slogans. These are not evidence. This is not evidence for doing something. These are only slogans. I never look back. I always look forward. If you don't look back, you don't know your history. And that is a huge mistake of our ummah. We do not know our history. Our children do not know our history. Because why? Because everyone wants to look forward. Just progress, progress. But in progress, there's regression as well, especially in ethics and morals. We might progress in building buildings. We might progress in our computers and our softwares and our mobiles and all these things, our clothes. But there is regression in ethics and morals, and no one can deny that. Just look at the world, the wars that we are fighting, the corruption that is out there, the sexual immorality that is around in our world being pushed through media. They're trying to push it slightly, slowly, but surely. And as we read yesterday in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah says, and how patient are they in the pursuit of hellfire. These people are patient. And we need to understand there is a huge agenda. Please, guys, if you take the most important point for me from this introduction, is that things are not by chance. There is an agenda. And that is why we Muslims have to counter it. It is a war. It is jihad. I have no doubt about it. Okay? It's not the type of jihad that people talk about. It is real warfare, intellectual warfare of ethics and all morals and so on. And we are losing. Sadly, we are losing. And if we don't start training soldiers for the future, intellectuals, doctors, engineers, scientists, teachers, professors, everyone, workers, to understand their position in this world and how they fit into this fight, we are going to lose. Right now we're losing, but we're just losing the battles. We're not losing the war yet. There are still people who are fighting back. But slowly, slowly, people are becoming more and more cowardish, and because of the political correctness that's being required from human beings today in the world. And what does that mean anyway? It means basically a golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. So LGBTQ was an issue 20 years ago. You know that when you and I grew up, there was no such thing as people, talking openly about that. It was looked down upon. Law did not allow it. If men would get married together with women, it would be criminalized, they would be punished, they would be jailed in all non-Muslim countries. Very few that maybe had some things going on. And sadly, I will share this piece of news with you, that Turkey was one of the first countries to decriminalize homosexuality, okay, during the Tanzimat. And this is, you're talking about hundreds of years before. During the Tanzimat, or the main changes in the laws that led towards the fall of the Khilafah, one of the things was, it's not allowed, but it was decriminalized. Like you wouldn't get punished for it anymore. And you can tell, was it because the Muslims wanted that? No, it's because there's so much influence and interference from the outside, and people basically they had to give in. And this is what we're faced with today. But I argue that you and I need to unite. The Muslims need to unite all over the world. It doesn't matter right now. It does not matter right now about the differences, guys. Even though the differences are important, I'm not putting them aside. I'm not the person to put differences aside. We have to understand that we need to find the truth even within Islam. But we need to unite. When the Mongols are attacking you from the east and the Crusaders from the west, you need to unite first, to put priorities. And we do have the resources, and we do have the intellectual capacity and the talent of people to be able to counter. But you know what we're missing though? Number one, networking. We are not networking. Do we not have money? We have money. We have a lot of money. This Ummah is very wealthy. But we don't know how to network. We don't know how to invest in scholars. And hence scholars are leaving and losing themselves and not able to do anything. Here in Malaysia, so many great people have left because people could not network to keep them here. And it does not take a lot. There's so many people like yourself, like myself, who can be shoulder to shoulder, feet to feet, shoulder to shoulder, in protecting and helping some of these people who have, made hijrah here, right? But networking is very important. We have the resources, we have the money, we have the talent, but we need to protect it. Number two, we need the courage. We don't have the courage. We are lacking the courage. People are scared. This is bottom line what I've learned in the past 10 years, 11 years, traveling around the world in Muslim countries and living in Muslim countries. What I have learned is that we are scared. People are scared. Why? The Prophet ﷺ told us in the hadith that there will be a time when the nations will gather to eat from us. The ummah will be like a plate, and I'm sure you guys have had mendi, right? The chicken mendi or beef mendi, lamb mendi. I think there's one restaurant here, Nasi Arab, very good. If you eat the traditional dish, it's a big dish. The Arabs used to put in a huge dish. And what happens actually, you share from the same dish. This is a sunnah, some say, that you basically sit around this big dish and everyone eats with their hands and eats from it. So the Prophet compared it to that. He says that the ummah will be like this big dish of food, and all the nations will gather around it, sit around and have a feast from it. Everyone will take some from it. And the Sahaba asked, Ya Rasulullah, are we going to be like little in number, like few in number? And the Prophet said, no, you will not. But you will be like this foam of the sea. You will be like, and use the word that the Sahaba did not understand. They said, Ya Rasulullah, what does that mean? He said, Hubbu dunya wa karahiyatul maut. Love of this dunya and hatred of death. Meaning you're scared. Meaning you want to live. And we read in Surah Al-Baqarah where Bani Israel, they wish that they will be given 1,000 years to live, right? Some people have this desire to just live. And because of that, because they're so attached to this life, they basically are weak and cowards, and they're not willing to stand for justice. So that's point number two. So number one, we need to network. Number two, we are weak, cowards, a lot of us, and not all of us, not all, I'm not pointing towards you, but the ummah is scared. And number three is we need to invest in the future. We need to invest in the future. Not everyone has to be a doctor or an accountant or an engineer. We need to invest in media. We need to invest in writers. We need to invest in lawyers who are going to be able to defend the ummah. We need to invest in creative people who are going to be able to take the fight to the media, and because we're losing it right now. You cannot compete with Netflix. You cannot. It's impossible. Impossible to compete with Netflix, with Hollywood, with Bollywood, right? The closest thing that we have produced so far that's taken some catch right now, mashallah, around the world, is the Ertugrul series. And I recommend it to people. Okay? If you do have Netflix, or I think you can find it on YouTube, I recommend the Ertugrul series. There are problems. I'm not saying that. There's a lot of issues with it. But I always say to people, take the good, leave the bad. You guys are students of knowledge. Okay? Watch it with your kids. The Omar series, for example, watch it with your kids. Yes, there's fighting and this and that, but it's part of life. Our children need to know the battles of Uhud, Badr, right? We teach them this. We know that there was bloodshed, but it's part of life. They need to understand. And we're going to talk about that because a lot of people are very worried about violence, right? There's a difference between violence and war. Okay, there's a difference. Yes, there's violence in war, but there's a difference between what we think of as violence and what the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba did in fighting in the war for establishing justice in the world in the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So we need to, that's point number three. Point number three is that we have to invest in the future. So number one, networking. Number two, we are scared. We need to get some bravery. We need to be brave. Number three, investing in the future of this ummah to stand up and fight this battle. Okay, which is what we're doing today, which is parenting. All right. So I want to start with one issue. The Prophet ﷺ was a father, you know that. And I want you to understand the dynamics. Times have changed, of course, there's different dynamics, but I want you to understand the Prophet ﷺ was a father. Okay, so he had Ibrahim that he lost, which is a huge test on him. And he cried and he suffered. But he had girls like Fatima and Kulthum and so on. But the Prophet ﷺ was a father. Okay, we have to understand. Not just that, he was an orphan, as you know. His father died before he was born, and his mother, Amina, died while he was very young. Okay? So he was an orphan. But he was raised by the village. His uncle, Abu Talib, and everyone was around him. Why am I saying this? Is to understand that parenting is not just the responsibility of two people, father and mother. Now, please note this point, because we make a huge mistake in doing this. Parenting is not just the responsibility of a mother and a father. That is why we are failing a lot of times. Because parenting is, as the African proverb goes, right? That you're raised by the village. The community used to raise the children. The streets used to raise the children. Yes, the kids used to play on the street and they would learn toughness. They would learn being street smarts. I grew up on the streets, I can say. It doesn't mean my parents left me to be on the streets. No, I learned a lot of smartness or street smart skills from being on the streets. Okay? But because we're scared today, we are very, very, protective of our children going outside. And I'm gonna tell you that is not something correct. Because the times have changed, yes. But trust me, even in our time when we grew up, there was still bad people. Bad people existed from the beginning of humanity. Okay? Don't think right now, because times have changed, that just everything is dangerous. This kind of fear, I'm not saying don't take precautions, but this kind of fear, okay, is stopped and has paralyzed parents from allowing their children to develop naturally. I grew up outside. I grew up in the forest. I climbed mountains. We used to have Boy Scouts that we used to go out with someone and sometimes even alone. Okay, my parents would send me to the market to teach me responsibility. We all experienced that. But if we ask ourselves today, what has happened? Why are we so scared? It's because we've been conditioned through media to believe that something bad will happen. Can something bad happen? Yes, it can. Do we have to protect our children? Yes, we do. Do we have to be overly protected where we make them weak? No, we don't. And remember, the Prophet ﷺ told us, "Aqal wa tawakkal." We have to take the means. We have to protect them. We have to teach them not to talk to strangers, not to do this, not to do that. But in the end of the day, how long can you hold them next to you in your house to make them weak? For every little thing. One of the greatest mistakes that I see parents doing is when their child is young, very young, little, barely walks. As soon as they fall down, as soon as they hit the ground, the parents go, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And they hug them and they jump on them and they kiss them and they this and they that. And then the child, if you notice, pay attention when this happens, when you see on the street someone, the child starts crying. The child starts crying. Because yes, they need that connection and to know that the parent is there to give him a hand to get up, but not that overly reaction where the child is scared and sees that, "Oh my God, what's my dad or my mom doing?" And then they start crying. If you let them go, "Okay, it's okay, baby, don't worry, come on, get up. My good girl, my good boy, mashallah, bismillah." So they feel that you're there encouraging them, you're there not leaving them, not caring, no, but you're not there panicking. and you find that they will not cry. They'll get themselves up. And that was something that my wife and I worked very hard at with our kids, to not jump and panic when something like that happens. And our kids got bruised many times. Our kids got hurt many times. And my son broke his hands, and I broke my hands. And alhamdulillah, you know, still it made me strong. These things will happen. You'll never be able to protect your children from the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It does not mean that you don't protect your children. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is some people overdo it and they instill this weakness in their children. So we have to understand that parenting is more than just two people protecting their kids and always on their case and always very, you know, that they lose themselves. No, we have to understand that it is a global, it is a village, it is everyone, the whole ummah. The Prophet ﷺ said when he was asked about what happens if we leave a weak progeny behind, he says, it's upon me and the ummah to take care of them. Look at that. The foundations of special needs education was already in Islam at the 1400 years ago, was already part of that. That it is upon the community to take care of these children, orphans. We know Surah Nisa is not just about women. Surah Nisa talks about, it is about the rights of the weak of society, not just women, not just widows, not just, you know, but orphans, children. We don't read the Quran like that to understand it like that, right? So it is a global ummah responsibility. In our culture, if I would walk on the street in my neighborhood and I would do something wrong, actually, anyone of my neighbors could come and grab me by the ear and give me a few slaps on my back and say, this is not right. And my dad would never interfere. I'll probably take another few smacks from him when I go home if he finds out what I've done. And it has happened to me. I don't encourage violence, but this is not violence. This is education. Personally, and you can quote me on that, I don't mind. I remember very well in second year child and family psychology, where, of course, being in the West, most of the people at that time already they were very Western, very washed, and it was a huge debate in our class. It's a big class with the family psychology teacher about disciplining children, and he used the word discipline, not violence, not beating. The word is discipline, but physical discipline. And his argument from a scientific perspective was, and I know there's other studies right now, but you have to understand, if you're in science, studies it can be depending on who invests and who wants what. It's not like that necessarily fully, but there's a lot of influence, a lot of data is fudged. Anyway, he was proving from his perspective and from certain research that disciplining your child is important. And I'm talking about physical discipline. Today, it's all hands off, right? Why? Because some people have gone overboard and have used violence and have abused children. There's a difference between abuse and discipline. This is the problem. People do not pay attention to the jargon, to the nomenclature, and to what the connotations that it stands for and the implications that it stands for. And hence, they just blanketed everything as violence. So now, you cannot touch your children, even though your parents put their hands on you and really gave you a few smacks to keep you straight, and you're okay. You turn out fine. Why? Because they loved you as well, and they balanced it with a lot of love. So yes, abuse never has love involved into it. It's never balanced by love. It is always abuse. And of course, that's going to cause a lot of developmental problems for children, especially in those prime formative stages. However, discipline is still the responsibility of parents and of the whole village. And we were disciplined. If I would walk on the street in Romania and I would do something wrong and my neighbor sees me, he will discipline me. My teacher in my class, I remember my history teacher was a black belt, he would discipline me. And I remember him today, and I thank him. And I remember very well walking with my father on the street, and my father was a teacher as well. And my mother is a teacher as well. And having students, gypsy students, we grew up in a heavily gypsy populated area, which might be like, you know, the equivalent of what, you know, the African Americans are going in the States right now, because they were oppressed and second-class citizens, and it was ghettos and criminals and all that. But it was because they were pushed into that type of stuff by the communists and the oppression that they've suffered throughout the centuries and slavery and all that. Anyhow, these gypsies would come to my father and literally kiss his hand. And I was shocked. And I remember being a child and I'm walking with my father on the street. And these kids were becoming big guys and weird looking guys and showing their respect to my father. And I remember, because as a child, I would also, before school, I would go to school with my father. Before me going to school, I would actually go to school with my father because we didn't have a babysitter. He wouldn't leave us at home. And I would see my father disciplining some of the kids in the school. And I remember specifically one case where this man, it was a man, came to my father and literally shook his hand and showed his respect. And he said, "Thank you, Mr." My father's name is Mikhail. "Thank you, Mr. Mikhail, for teaching me manners. Thank you for teaching me manners." He literally, I'm sorry to say, you might disagree with me, and you can, inshallah, voice it into the comments. And when you want to raise your concerns, I'm giving you my perspective. That's why I said it's going to be a discussion, maybe even a debate. And he said clearly the same words. He said, "You disciplined, hit me, beat me when I really needed it." And he says, "As opposed to my friends who have gone to jail, I didn't. I was afraid of you, and I did my homework, and I did my studies, and I have a job now, and I have a child, and I'm married. I just wanted to thank you." It sounds bad, guys, isn't it? But he thanked him for literally for disciplining him, for hitting him. And I was shocked. And yes, I was disciplined by my father, but I was shocked at the respect that he had for my father. And I was shocked at, because I would see my father discipline him. But at the same time, I knew the situation of the other students in the neighborhood and the criminality and the problems and the parenting issues, the growing up issues that they were facing: drugs, alcohol, prostitution, and fighting, violence, and all that. The ones who were raised by and my father took it upon himself to educate these kids. Their parents were not there. Their parents were not there because their parents were drunks. Their parents were on drugs. Their parents were killed. But my father took it upon himself to educate. And that's where I believe we're failing today, because you, brother and sister, are struggling sometimes to educate your children because you have no support. And sometimes we make the mistake of not even allowing our own parents to interfere. Their grandparents, we don't even allow them to contribute. My grandparents, of course, they had a big part in educating me. And my father never said, "Oh, my mother, why'd you put your hand on them?" Because it was like they're my parents. And sorry, my neighbors as well, and the neighbors next to us, and the guy across the street, and my teacher, and everyone had something to do with this. Okay? Everyone had something to do with this. Okay? So, it is a communal responsibility, guys. It is upon all of us, and we are failing at that, right? But going back to the issue, we need to work together. We need to get involved. We need to set up organizations. We need to set up education institutions. We need to set up systems like classes. We can, I believe we can win this fight. We can win this war that we are fighting right now, and we are losing. We are losing right now, okay? And because of the taboo nature, and some of you might not yet know what are the issues that we're faced with, and how it influences our children, a lot of people need to be educated. That's why we need to do more stuff like that. When I do my classes, even if you follow me on social media, you'll find that I talk about real problems. I don't beat around the bush. I talk about real problems. What's my position in them? You can find it. But you'll find that it's about real issues. And people caution me. People warn me. People threaten me. But I say, wait a second. You know, the other time I spoke to a Sheikh, actually. The Sheikh said, basically, the Sheikh said, you know, you shouldn't be talking about these things, bro. I said, doesn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about zina in the Quran? Yeah. Doesn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about riba in the Quran? Yeah. Doesn't Allah talk about alcohol and evil and all these things? Yeah. So, I mean, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning us, and we have to warn people. This is our job, our responsibility. To convey from the Prophet. The Prophet warn people. It's not that we're trying to spread bad things. We are trying to warn people. Parents are facing a lot of issues today. Okay, what are some of these issues that are so taboo and parents don't want to talk about it, but their kids are involved in? I was doing a course recently, and some parents had issues with some of the language. And then they came back after the session to me saying that, okay, we need some more of these sessions. And we need to talk about this. Because now my child is saying this. My child is asking about that. I didn't know that they actually know about these things, but hey, they do, right? So sometimes we ourselves, we do not know where our children stand and how much they know, but they do know a lot because they are being educated by the media. They are being educated by social media. They go to school, they socialize with people, and then they basically come out and they have all these ideas, and it might be too late. When you catch on as parents, it might be too late. So, what are some of the parenting issues that we are dealing with today? Just to list some of the things to understand, and then we can discuss some things. So right now we're going to talk about the problem. I've introduced the issue. I've introduced what the responsibility is. I introduced that it's a war, just to review a bit. I've introduced that we can win this war if we work together, if we start being more brave, if we network, if we use our resources properly. It is a responsibility upon the Ummah to work together. If the Prophet ﷺ was a parent and he was the best example, Islam protects the rights of the children, of the weak, of the women, of the orphans, and it is upon the whole Ummah to do that. The 21st century is not that the 20th century where we grew up. Okay, we were educated and disciplined by our parents, by our community, by our teachers. Today we have changed. There's a lot of new challenges, and parents are very scared. They don't, it's all hands off. Media has influenced the way we perceive our children and perceive education, and parenting has changed it a lot. If we open up our eyes around, we will find that there's a lot of issues, and the evidence is there that we are progressing from a materialistic perspective. We're building more roads, we're building more buildings, we are developing technology. However, we are regressing when it comes to ethics and morals, and there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it, right? And of course, first thing that we started was with the intention, and that we have to have a purpose in our lives as parents, mothers, fathers. Everyone has to find and feel the purpose in their life when they wake up, so that we as an ummah unite in purpose, which is very clear in the Quran. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. We worship Allah. We establish the law of Allah on the earth. It's not just a Passover. It's not just a fun time. It's not just a hobby. Islam is not just a religion. That it is a way of life. And this is what we are united in objective, in purpose, in action. And when we do that, we can win. We can win. We can reestablish Islam on this earth. We can bring back the Islamic leadership. But everyone has to do their part. Every single one of you has to do their part. I'm doing my part by educating people. You have to do your part with whatever Allah has blessed you and you're good at. What's your skill? What's your resource? All you have to do is say, hey, I'm here. What can I do? How can I help? How do we network? How do we come together? How do we prioritize? Right? Intention is important, but also correct action is as important. And priority is part of that, because you might think you're doing something right, but that's not the first thing that you should be doing. So, objective, purpose, and that is one of the things that you're going to see when we talk about children that is missing from them, because we don't feel like we have a sense of belongingness. The Ummah, as I said, the Chinese, they feel like they belong to a dynasty, to a huge history. The Indians, the same. Even the Westerners, the French, the Greeks, the Romans, right? The whites. The Muslims somehow have forgotten that they belong to the best. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. You are the best nation that was brought forth to mankind. Okay? تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. You enjoy good, you forbid evil, and you believe in Allah. Right? So, purpose, objective. I want you to wake up tomorrow morning. And subhanAllah, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to give myself, as I said, I am a parent. I am what I am. I'm not perfect. I have a lot of mistakes. I'm struggling. It is the jihad for me every day, right? But when I wake up in the morning, I wake up with a purpose. I feel like it is the best feeling in my life. I don't care what I do. I don't care what job I have. But for me, I dedicated my life. When I became Muslim, I left kufr. It was a tough time. I just didn't become Muslim from Christianity. I left Christianity very young, as a very young age. I think when I left Christianity, I was about 15. Imagine, at a very young age, and searching and struggling, and the depression, the suicidal thoughts, the problems that I've gone through, the amount of depression and insecurities and looking for purpose in life. And then Allah guided. And actually, I would think that all that was guidance from Allah. All that. I have faced depression. That's why I help people with depression, because I've experienced it. For those of you who were in my previous class, when we did that drawing of how to advise people, right? And we talked about pointing the finger, how one finger points forward and three point backward. Remember, I did the diagram, whether you wanna blame or you wanna learn, right? So I've learned from my depression and my suicidal thoughts as a teenager on how to help others. And I have helped thousands of people in the past 15, 16 years. Be them adults, be them teenagers, be them children. Because that was Allah's guidance for me. I had to go to the lowest level in the belly of the fish. Like Yunus alayhi salam, you know, La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu min al-zalimin. The darkest of the darkest, in the bottom of the bottom, to scream out for Allah, and then Allah guided me, you know. So I suffered a lot. I grew up without parents. My parents divorced when I was 13. I left Eastern Europe, Romania, when I was 13. I am just turning 37, alhamdulillah. Why am I telling this? So we can connect, so we understand my background. I'm turning 37, inshallah, in 20 days or so. I've been working full-time since the age of 14. I've never stopped yet. Full-time, different jobs. I didn't stop, basically. Alone. I put myself through university alone. I grew up alone. And here I am. What happened? Because my education and my parenting was quite strong at the beginning, even though my parents didn't get along, even though they divorced, even though there's so many problems, so much pain and suffering. But it was part of my upbringing. upbringing, and I could see it. And then my grandparents were there also helping to educate me, but then they passed away. And then I was educated, you know, by who in the end? Who gave me parenting, even at the young age, at the older age of 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay? It was the Ummah, the community, the Muslim community, guys. You guys are the ones who parented me. You have to understand that every single one of you, and I'm talking about the Muslims, had a role in my upbringing. Yes, my parents, my grandparents, my neighbors, everyone till a certain age, but then that system fell apart. And that's what we have to understand. How do we ensure that if we fall apart, if we fail, what will protect our children after that? Because we could fail. The two parents, mother and father, can fail. And because we look at the statistics, please look at the statistics. When you have time, type a bit of statistics. About 50% of marriages end up in divorce within the first 10 years. Okay? So that means that the children are going to be with a single parent or between custody, in court, and seeing fights, seeing battles, seeing screaming and crying and this and that. So what is the system that's in place to protect our children if we fail? My parents failed. They've done amazing till the age of 11, 12. That's when problems really started. They divorced by 13. The suffering and the screams and the fights and the problems that took place were huge. And both my brother and I, witnessed those. And subhanAllah, you also have to understand that qadr Allah in the end. You do your best and Allah will do the rest. Because a lot of parents, they get depressed. The first things that I do with parents when I talk about problems and they come to me with problems is I tell them, maybe it's not your fault, because they blame themselves. Recently I had a case of a young man who left Islam here in Malaysia. And his father's crying in front of me. You know why he's crying? Not necessarily because the guy left Islam. He's crying because he left Islam. He's crying because he feels like he failed. And sadly, his wife is blaming him instead of helping him. Instead of understanding Islam, the qadr of Allah, she's blaming him. And I mean, looking at the case, he was there for his father, for his child. He gave him everything. And he gave him everything. I mean, I try to understand as far as I can the problem. And when I analyzed, I saw that he gave him everything. They tried time-wise, everything, money, resources, love, taking him out, allowed him to have this, that. And still the child didn't turn out. He left Islam. He's not a Muslim. And his father's breaking down in tears. Imagine a grown-up man, 40 years old, crying in front of him. And the first thing I told him, I said, brother, maybe it's not your fault. And he looked up at me and said, what do you mean? It is my fault. I said, who told you? He said, my wife. I said, but you don't have to listen to your wife, man. He said, but why, Sheikh? How come? I said, because look at Noor alayhi salam. Are you going to tell me that Noor had poor parenting skills? He was a prophet. He was a prophet. Why didn't his son believe? Why didn't he listen to him? Because this was the qadr of Allah. Everyone is responsible. You do your best, Allah will do the rest. Allah will know what's in everyone's heart. A lot of parents become depressed, and because they become depressed when their kids turn out bad and they blame themselves, they paralyze themselves so they cannot even tackle the problem anymore. And not just that, they will lose some of their other children. And not just that, they will lose themselves because they paralyze themselves. I'm not saying don't care about the ones that you're about to lose or you're losing or there's problem. No. All I'm saying is that you need to understand where do you stand in terms of your responsibility. If you're at fault, of course, that's you have to acknowledge that. But not always are you to be blamed for. And a lot of parents blame themselves and they start blaming each other, and the husband and wife start fighting, and it's causing more problems. and the kids see it. So there might be one child who's going astray, it didn't turn out well, but then the other 2 or 3 or 4 now are going to end up suffering as well, because all your resources and your energy is focused towards that one child, and because you're fighting and you don't know how to approach the situation together, and you're playing the blame game. It's your fault. It's your fault. Fighting, argument can lead to divorce, can lead to problems. The other children can be lost as well, and that's not what Islam teaches. So I told this man, I said, maybe it's not your fault, bro. Noor, it was not his fault. Okay? Ibrahim, that his father went astray, it was not his fault. Lut and his wife, it was not his fault. It's not the fault of Lut, alayhi salam, his wife went astray. Right? It's not necessarily your fault. Sayyidina Yaqub and his sons, 12 children, right? And the problems that he had. Or, they're all basically, went against Yusuf alayhi salam. Right? Was it the father's fault? No. He tried his best. He was a prophet. So, guys, don't blame yourself right away. That's not the solution. That's not how you deal with this. Because it will paralyze you and it will cause problems for you. Okay? So, that's how I grew up, as I said, from this kind of family background. And, it was tough, but now I'm helping other people. But, just to go to the main point, it was you, the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who stood there as a backup system to make me who I am today. Honestly, if it wasn't for the Muslims in my community, for the masjid, for the brothers who loved me, who took care of me, who called me, who inquired about me, who helped me. Literally, brothers, I'm telling you, who helped me when I was suffering, when I had debts, when I had things, they stood up for me. These people, may Allah bless them. We think always that the Muslims are bad, we are weak, and this and that. We are weak. But there's a lot of khair in this ummah. There's a lot of goodness in the Muslim community. And they're the ones. When my parents failed and divorced and everyone went their way, my father left us, and my mother was depressed, it was the Allah, first and foremost, who guided me and took me through those difficulties. And then it was the Muslim community who protected me and raised me to become who I am today. They believed in me, and that's why I believe that we need to have systems to protect them. And because this parenting course that I'm doing right now, this discussion, it makes no sense, guys, if we're just going to have theory. If I'm just going to lecture you and we're just going to have theory. We need to, I hope, that the outcome of this course, inshallah, by tomorrow, at the end, that we can come up with some future plans as to what we want to do next, okay? In terms of training, in terms of courses, in terms of systems, in terms of putting our heads together and seeing how we can tackle this problem. Let us take a quick break, 5 minutes, okay? Just to drink some water, and then we'll get back. So it's 11:10 right now. We'll get back at 11:15, and I'm gonna raise a few more points. Then we're gonna open up the floor for some questions and discussions, because I wanna start interacting on what I've said so far and take some of the questions that you've posted already, inshallah, because there might be a lot of questions. And then tomorrow, inshallah, when we get to it, we're gonna start going through some, a bit more theory, some of the examples on how the Prophet ﷺ dealt and parented some of the kids, and not just his own kids, but the kids of the Sahaba and the Ummah and the Sahaba themselves. The Prophet ﷺ, you can say that he was a father, right? When we talk about Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also saying, like the Prophet ﷺ is almost like our father, okay? There are mothers of the believers, but the Prophet ﷺ says he's closest to us than ourselves, right? Azizun alayhi ma'anittum harisun alaykum bil mu'minina ra'uf rahima. He is sad when something happens to us. It hurts him. He is to the believers ra'uf rahim. He is soft, he is gentle, he is merciful. Right? So we're going to look at that. And we're going to look at comparing Western system to Islamic system and what are the issues. And then we're going to try to come up with some solutions, inshallah. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 11:15, inshallah. Okay? 5-minute break. You can start putting your questions if you want during this time, okay? On the question board, on the chat. Okay, 5 minutes, right? Bismillah. Bismillah. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are back, inshallah, in about 45 minutes left. So let us address some of the issues. I'm just going to review what I've talked about so far. Some of you have left and gone and come back. I'm not sure exactly. Sister Shamin, is there any way to disable to see who joins and who leaves? I don't know, it's distracting. I keep forgetting to ask about this or to look into this. It does distract me because it keeps saying joining, leaving, someone has left. And it kind of plays with my mind. It keeps doing that. Did I say something wrong? People are getting upset. They're leaving, they're joining. Throughout the lecture, I keep seeing people coming and going. And it is a bit distracting. Is there any way we can disable that for me to see? Or I don't know.
Can someone tell me how to do that?
Okay, for tomorrow or for next. I've been thinking actually over and over to keep seeing if that's...
Which I will look into after this, yeah.
Yeah, inshallah, no problem. So maybe for tomorrow. I mean, throughout my Zoom lectures, I keep thinking about this, and I always forget to try to see, look into it, how I can do it. I keep saying join, left, join, left, join, left, and it's just causing me to be distracted. Okay, so I'll try to review from what I start from the beginning. We talked about intention and how important it is in everything that we do, and having a purpose in life as parents, as part of the Ummah, how life changes when you have a purpose in life, waking up in the morning with that purpose. And it just requires a niyyah. It just requires the niyyah. We talked about how the 21st centuries, we are all part of the last century. 21st century has a lot of different challenges, and our children are facing that. We were raised in a different way, and we're not raising our kids the same way that we were raised, sadly, because of all the influences and the problems around the world. Nurturing of the society takes usually a huge impact, has a huge impact on the way we act and the way we deal with things. We talked about the challenges that we are faced with. We talked about parenting, and that you know, it's more than just two people. It has to be a village that raises these people, these children. We talked about how important it is for us to we have the resources, we just need to network. We talked about how important it is to be brave in facing the challenges that we are facing. We talked about how we need to invest in our children. It is an investment, so we can have and raise and nurture the next warriors of this ummah to fight against the challenges that are being there. We talked about it's a very intellectual jihad that is taking place in this ummah, and it's going to need a lot of warriors, and we can do it. We can win, inshallah. Right now we're kind of losing, but we can win if we're gonna put our heads together and we're gonna you know, get our resources together and have an objective. We talked about mashallah, a lot of things. We talked about how responsibility is upon everyone, that not everyone is you know, to be blamed for the failure sometimes, because people blame themselves for failing and so on. We gave the example of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, Prophet Lut. You do your best and Allah will do the rest. It is qadr in the end, and we shouldn't be scared of anything. We have to do our best, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of us, and He will give whatever He decides, inshallah, to give to us. So all these things we kind of covered, and now I want to just take some comments, inshallah, and see some of the things that have been said. And if you want to ask more, we can, inshallah. And then if not, we'll continue. Yeah. Okay. They're saying if you could talk about the different parenting, like Western and Islamic methods, it would be helpful, like allowing kids questioning and answering back, equal lack of respect. Okay, I mean, we can compare the systems, but I want to address this a little bit today as well. The issue with the Western type of parenting is it's failed. I'm so sorry, but it's failed. See, like, I don't want to get controversial, but I think we have the right to say things. We're not calling people to hurt anyone, but democracy is a failed system. It's not an Islamic system. You have to understand that. A lot of people, we live in a democracy, supposedly, but it is a failed system. Why? Why do you say that? Well, look around, guys. Please look around. Why is democracy a failed system? Because it has failed system. It has failed people. Look at America right now with what's happening with George Floyd. This is a democratic country. This is the democratic country. This is the democratic country. This is the model of democracy. And it has failed. Democracy has failed in this century and last century over and over and over again. There's no such thing as equal rights. There's no such thing as humanities, and racism is there. Economical systems have collapsed over and over again. I mean, I can just continue listing. This is not my personal opinion. Look at the evidence, right? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. Look at the evidence. I mean, for God's sake, there's countries that are, nations that are on the brink of civil war just for a small thing, because people are so frustrated with the failure of the system, the justice system, so many things. And hence, Western philosophy of education is also a failure. I am part of it. I am a school principal. Western philosophy of education. All of us have put our children, would love to and want to put our children in Western educational systems. But they're failing them because the foundation is not strong. It's not built on faith. The foundation is not built on divine system. We have these integrated schools, but we're trying to Islamicize things. We're just trying to paint it an Islamic way. But it's not like that, because still the foundation is quicksand. And still people start waking up and seeing the Ummah and the ulama. We need our own curriculums, our own systems. We have to go back to grassroots level till we realize that we ain't gonna do it. Trust me, we're not gonna do it. I'm coming and I'm inside that system. It is a failed system. And don't give me the fact, because marks and results do not equal to correct outcomes. Just because my child or your child has gotten IGCSE's perfect score does not mean that their education is good. I'll tell you why. Very quick, I'll tell you why. Because when they go to university, the professors are complaining that these guys have no skills. Yes, they can memorize well. Yes, they can do good at tests, but they do not know how to problem solve. That's one part of it. I would add another part, that they don't have a lot of times ethics and morals. We look at the corruption of politicians. We look at the corruption of leaders. We look at the corruptions of, these guys went through the system, through the best system. Why? Because there was no foundation to uphold the fear and taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when it is not there, you can be the smartest guy in math, English, and science. Is not going to do anything, because your knowledge of math, English, and science is going to lead you to, instead of creating energy, creating bombs that will kill people. Instead of creating the metal that builds the frames of hospitals and schools and so on, you'll be creating metal that builds weapons that will be killing people and used in wars, and airplanes that, so-called democratic countries are selling to Muslim countries for millions and billions to just kill other people. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie, evidence don't lie. Okay, think about that. So I believe that the Western educational system of upbringing children, parenting, is failed because, number one, I didn't want to get into this that fast, but number one, they are very influenced by the liberalist movement. Our children are being, if you go to the West, most parents, not all, there's a huge push now back, but it's late, from the Christian community. There is, and sadly the Muslims are not really following. But, just the issue of LGBTQ. You are going to be taught these things in school in grade 2 and 3. If you go to Canada, USA, Australia, these things are taught in grade school to children. And parents do nothing about it. Actually, the parents will be showing their children these new Disney movies that now are having gay characters in them, and explain to them, because you have to be nice to everyone. I'm not saying not to be nice to people, but you cannot accept these things. Okay? The Western parenting system also is not allowed to discipline their children. In the United States or Canada, if the child calls the police that his father put his hand on him, the police will come and arrest the father or the mother as abusive. You can divorce your parents in the West. Okay? They will take your children away. Okay? Very fast. I've dealt with many cases. I used to work for the Windsor Islamic Association for Islamic Social Welfare Association as a social worker in my early years of converting to Islam, first few years. I was a social worker, and I was dealing with cases where the Children's Aid Society would just come and pick up the children from the Muslim families and put them in non-Muslim houses. Why? Because the father spanked his child on the bum. Okay, not on the face, not beat him that he's bleeding, but just put his hand on it. And because the child knows at school, they tell him that if your parent touches you, you can call 911. They would do it. And how many kids have lost their parents and parents lost their kids because of this? And they're raised as non-Muslims. They come and pick you up the same day, guys. So it's a failed system because there's nothing. It just keeps changing. Parents keep allowing children whatever they want. They have certain families who are educated, with rules and regulations. In the end, parents don't restrict them. There's no halal and haram concept. They can watch whatever they want. Everyone has their own privacy and their own, confidentiality, right? At that early age, there's no concept of hijab or of interaction between the boys and the girls. And it's just there. You find these videos of little girls dancing and being princesses, and their parents are encouraging them to have their social media, and they are shaking and dancing like they're adult women. Even, of course, that's haram. But, and the parents, encourage them. And sometimes the mother with the daughter and the father with the daughter with the boy, and they think this is cool. This is cool parenting, right? The Western concept is failed in terms of parenting because there is no ethics and morality that is inspired from the divine, from Allah. That is the first thing. The Christians are fighting back now and trying to start something, but it's very late. And of course, they are faced with a lot of objections. And of course, because the law is not on their side, it fires back. But you have to understand that the parenting is not happening only at home; it's happening in the school. And because the school system is such a way, is wired in such a way, it's tough, man. You have your kids at school for 8 hours a day. So one of the sheikhs said, we have to undo all the haram that they learn at school when they come home. You know what I mean? So it's a big problem. It's a huge problem that we're faced with, guys. Right? So that's why the Western educational parenting system is failed. When you look at stuff like Bart Simpson, right? We grew up with the Simpsons. It shows disrespect towards parents. They make fun of it. Married with Children, the show that was, from the 90s, where it's all about disrespecting the parents. And it's like your typical American family. They make it look fun and funny. But this is the reality. This is how the lack of respect is not there. And why? Because parents are not allowed to discipline their children. I'm not saying abuse, no. Disciplining. And because children know that the parents cannot do that. So then they start acting up. There's a saying in Arabic that the person who's safe from the law, he will misbehave. The person who is safe from being punished, basically, he will or she will misbehave. And this is normal. It happens. Yes, there are some parents in the West who are instilling strict rules in the house and so on. In the end, to them it remains from person to person, from family to family, whatever their personal family values are. For us, it cannot be like that. It has to be system-based because we are Muslims. It has to be a standard. For them, it's just like, oh, our family is more virtuous than another family. We believe in these ethics and morals. No, for us, it is a universal system of application of this. That is why the Islamic methods are better. And Islamic methods teach respect. Islamic methods teach responsibility. Islamic methods teach punishment. And the problem is because we've been surrounded by this weakness of always thinking that it's just positive, 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 everything is positive. And I'll refute that in a second, that not everything is positive, because Allah says, Bashiran wa nadhira. It has to be positive and negative. There's glad tidings and there's warning. There's Jannah and Jahannam. The Prophet ﷺ, the first thing he came out with publicly, brothers and sisters, was not, guys, let's be positive. We have to be positive, right? Like love, everything is love, or whatever, this one, I don't know, they do all these signs of love and hearts and so on. The Prophet ﷺ stood on the little mount and he told, I warn you of a punishment that is coming from behind, from Allah. I am the message of Allah. I warn you of a punishment. And that's where we know, Tabbat yada Abi Lahabi wa tab, right? Abu Lahab said, Tabbat ya Muhammad, may you perish. You gathered us for his here to tell us this. We know this story, right? If I were to tell you that there's an army coming from behind to attack you, would you believe me? They said, yes, we believe you. Al-Amin. He says, I tell you there's a punishment coming from Allah. I'm the messenger of Allah. Islamic system covers both because it's balanced. There is positive and there's negative. There's blessings and there's warnings. There is hugs and there's attack sometimes. This is how it is. So definitely as a system, the Western parenting system is changing so much. It is changing and changing and changing and changing. And that's one of the weaknesses. Just like the ethics and the morals of the system itself is changing all the time, depending on who has more influence, which side, and what's happening around the world. While the system of Islam has to be strong and has to be consistent. These kind of ethics and morals do not change in Islam, guys. Our clothes change, our cars change, certain methodologies depending on what happens, but our ethics and morals don't change. Never in Islam. Never. Okay, Bismillah. I'm a big believer in discipline the kids from young age, but these days other parents don't agree with my style of parenting. Well, that's sad. It's very sad because they're influenced by what's going around. Again, because we are so influenced by what we watch. We are so influenced by what is said. For example, when I was in the Middle East, the first couple of years, we were allowed to discipline the children in the school. It was part of the school system. I'm telling you right now that we were allowed to hit the students. And you had to sometimes. They were so wild. You had to. And if you wouldn't do it, the parent would come to school. And if you wouldn't do it, the bigger brother from a higher grade would come down and he would discipline his own brother in front of everyone. And it was because it was a culture, the child would not say, they call the police. And so they would accept it, submit to it, and know that they were wrong. And they never, ever, ever, said anything against it or did not accept it. And I remember my student Khalifa, and I disciplined him. And but he respected me so much, and he knew that he was naughty. And he was so naughty that they wanted to move him from my class. Wallahi, I swear that he was holding on to my foot and crying. And two staff were trying to drag him out of my classroom to move him to another class at the advice of the principal. But he was saying that I love Ustaz Gabriel. I want to be in his class. Please. He was saying, please, I will stop. Please. No problem. He was, trying to speak in broken English. He was holding on to my foot. And they had to leave in my class. And he was crying. He says, no, I love you. And because I would love these kids. I wouldn't just, scream at them or get angry. I mean, I was a teacher for many years. But I would love them. And that's the whole point, that when you discipline children, it has to be balanced with love. One of the scholars was passing by a house, going to his dars, and he saw a mother beating her child. And he said, SubhanAllah. You know, and the child was literally running around, screaming. The mother's chasing him, and he ran away. After the scholar finished his dars, he went back the same road, and he saw that child sleeping on the stairs of his mother's house. And he said something amazing. He said, SubhanAllah, look, he said, look, this woman beat her child, but he knows that he comes back to her. He said, same Allah warns us with punishment and with, that we will be punished, but still we know that the only refuge and the only way is to return back to him. Just like this child returned back to his mom, right? She hit him, she beat him, he ran away, but he came back to her doorstep because he knows that he needs her. Same way, guys, remember, Allah always punishes us. Even in this life, sometimes things happen. But who can we go to other than Allah, isn't it? Allah warns us very severely. Who do we run away to? You cannot escape from Allah except by going to Allah. That's what the scholar said. Golden words. So sadly, parents who don't know how to, and I'm talking about the correct way, not abusive, in a proper way, and they think they've taken this Western methodology. It is wrong, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you as Muslims know that Allah warns you in the Quran, that Allah not just says this, but in this life, He might punish you to some of the hardships that you're going through. Right? And as we say in Romanian, that God doesn't punish by the stick. Right? God doesn't beat you with the stick. Right? You'll be punished by certain things in your life that will happen. And this is what Allah decides. And in the hereafter, if we don't repent and don't amend, He's going to punish us even more. But the point here is that Allah, the Creator, the most merciful, the one that starts the Quran by Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, or the most merciful, especially merciful. But He warns us and He punishes and so how come? We learn parenting and manners and etiquettes from Allah, first and foremost. A bird does not fly with one wing. This whole pacifistic, hands-off, everything type of thing is destroying our system. It's destroying our schools. There's no respect for teachers. There's no respect for parents. I'm not supporting abusive adults. These people need to be dealt with. They need to be punished, and the law has to take them. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about real parents who love their children, who hug them, but at the same time have to put their hands on them sometimes. Grandparents spoil their children? Yes, I agree, but that's okay. As long as the grandparents, you have to sometimes play good cop, bad cop. And parents and grandparents have to talk to each other as to how they work on raising the children. If the grandparents are going to spoil a bit, then the parents have to be a bit stricter. Okay, if they get spoiled from one side, then we have to balance it with some strictness from the other side. There's nothing wrong with being kind and nice and spoiling the kids sometimes, especially grandparents do. But when they do it too much and it's causing problems, and then the parents also spoil them, then it's really destructive. Yeah, pampering children is very destructive. It's very destructive. I'm not saying we shouldn't be good to them. They are sometimes in this stage where they need that love and affection. Ali radiallahu anhu says a statement that, at the beginning, the children, you play with them first, then you're their friends, then they're your peers. There's different stages in the development. Okay, there are different stages in the development. And there's a certain stage where, khalas, you're not going to hit them anymore or be harsh with them. Once they reach the age of 13, 12, 13, 14, they're already, Islamically speaking, they're adults. You're not going to start beating them now, This is not the time, man. And they're already like adults, big adults. We travel told by Americans. Yes, okay, so we travel to the US often. Many times we're told by Americans when we discipline our children in public. Last year, there was even a citizen arrest made on me because I scolded my daughter for wandering off. When the police took down my statement, he told me that there's a serious issue with parents in America as they don't discipline their children the way they should. Yes. And it shows in the way kids are in America now. So he told me to keep at it because kids need parents to be parents. Just sharing experience. Very great point. Yes, when we go to Canada, we are so scared of screaming at our children or doing something like that in public, if they disappear or they disobey, or, just disciplining them. Because, as you said, there'll be a citizen arrest. Yeah, people will gather around and they think that they took the law in their hands and call the police on you. And in Canada, it's even worse. In Canada, they will take your children away for the smallest mistake. I'm not talking about arresting. I'm talking about taking your children away. Literally taking your children away. Okay? So I agree, yes. And a lot of times the cops, they know what's going on because the cops deal with the crimes and the problems. So they'll kind of take it easy. But in Canada, they don't just send the cops. They send right away Children's Aid Society. It's a huge organization, a very strong organization, a lot of lobbying. And they take the kids away. Especially they target the Muslim families, subhanAllah. And there's been so many, cases I've worked with them. So yeah, it's a great point, sister, whoever shared it. And in the West, it's really a big problem. I mean, it's a huge problem. They can take your children away if you don't have a booster seat in your car. They catch you in your car with your children. Let's say even if you strap them up with a seat belt, if you don't have a booster seat, you can get arrested and they can take your children away. There's a lot of things that can happen, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, Okay, I recall a hadith that does not allow hitting a child in a certain area. Can you elaborate on that? What does physical discipline start at 10? Okay, so yeah, some of the hadith, obviously hitting the face is not allowed. Okay, hitting the face is not allowed. That is a general rule in Islam. So you cannot hit your face. Sometimes parents slap their children on the face. This is haram. You're actually committing haram. Not allowed. With regards to hitting, the Prophet ﷺ said that, to teach your kids salah, okay, and if they don't pray by the age of 10, then you can beat them. Okay, this is about salah, if they don't pray. So we see here, subhanAllah, salah associated with hitting. Why? Because there's that age right now, they still don't necessarily make a choice themselves, but they need some conditioning. If they become they have to be put some fear. They're not going to hate you because you love them, you take care of them, you have to balance that, that discipline with love and protection. But they're going to be scared a bit. They're going to know they have to pray. And through that repetition of the prayer, even if they're doing it for you right now, slowly as they reach 13, 14, 15, okay, by then they will internalize it and start praying, right? So teach your children how to pray at the age of 7, beat them if they don't by the age of 10, right? So it's very clear. Hadith mentions here beating with salah if they don't pray. So imagine for other stuff as well. But it is part of discipline, guys. But it's not abuse. It's not about overdoing it. It's about instilling that fear and showing them that who's boss? Yes, you are the boss in the house, guys. You, your husband, your wife, the parents are the ones who are the bosses in the house. And the kids need to understand that you call the shots, okay? When they're going to be in their house, they're going to call the shots. But till they're under your roof, you call the shots. And sadly, that line has been, very, very flimsy lately. And people get like, no, what do you think? How should? No, you're the parent. You can talk to your children. You can make shura with them. You can discuss things. Yes, in the end, you take the decision. They have to follow, okay? Because it's your responsibility. You're the one who's doing the tarbiyah. It's, Islamic education, parenting is tarbiyah. You're raising them up. You are taking them through a full-fledged system, right? So discipline can start at any age. I mean, early ages sometimes. It doesn't have to be strong, but as I said, in our class, family psychology, the professor was making an argument for quite an early age because he was saying that the kids don't understand yet. So a child wants to run in front of a car on the street. and you grab him, he's going to laugh, and he's going to do it again. You're going to say, no, baby, don't do it, not good. No, he will do it again. And maybe the next time you're not going to catch him. So he was saying that if you give him a little slap on the bum, he will associate or she will associate that with going on the street or putting their hand on something hot, which might hurt them. He was coming from a scientific research-based, evidence. And he said at that age, they don't understand. A lot of American parents will be like, now listen, Johnny, you shouldn't be running in front of the street. You're going to get hurt. The car, the toot will hit you. And the guy's like, I don't understand. He's going to run in front of the street again, right? No. He said, Johnny, boom. Don't go in the street. Boom. That's why. Johnny's like, oh, next time he sees a car he wants to run, like, oh, wait a second. I'm going to get a boom on my back. I don't want to do that. Till they reach the age of understanding that, hey, if I run in front of the car, they built enough experience and understanding and knowledge that if I run in front of the car, I'm going to get hurt. If I put my hand on fire, I'm going to get hurt, right? How do we find the perfect balance between deen and dunya and incorporating this daily in our child's life? And how do we strive to set the best example in their daily, okay, because they learn from us? We cannot separate deen and dunya. That's the problem, guys. Okay, this is the way we are looking at it as a problem. We do not separate deen from dunya. There's no balance that needs to be done between deen and dunya, because deen is part of dunya and dunya is part of deen. The way we look at it, because we've done this separation, this division between mosque and state, I don't want to call it church and state, between mosque and state, we are suffering because we think Islam is like part-time and dunya is the rest. No, deen is part of Islam, a part of dunya, and dunya is part of deen. Okay, so whatever you do in your life, in your dunya and everything, Islam is in there because we're living in this dunya. So Islam is the system that manages our dunya. Okay, dunya is the hardware, it's what we're living in, and Islam is the software. We need to apply it throughout in everything. Then you'll find your real balance throughout the everything. You go to the mall, you have to say your dua. You have to be honest. Everything you do, your chores at home. For me and my wife, we worked really hard. Again, we're not perfect. We have a lot of problems, but alhamdulillah for everything. But we recently were able to get some victory with getting our young kids to have their chores, properly, like real chores. I'm not talking about just picking up something. I'm talking about each and every one of them has a certain responsibility, even the youngest one. And they know when we say something, and this is time for that. It took a long time to get it. There's a lot of pain and arguing and this and that. But because we made it part of life, it's part of deen, they understand it. Now they've started practicing. So for the first time in a long time, when we found that we've made a breakthrough, right? But you have to make Islam is part of life. Islam is like this with life, with dunya. Deen and dunya. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. It's part of it. Okay? Nowadays, physical punishment is akin to abuse. How do we convince Muslim parents that a smack on the thigh by the teacher of a 4-year-old child when he's naughty? Yeah, this is a problem. People think it's abuse. It's not abuse. That's why, because the Western mentality, liberalism, all this have dictated, and they are defining the terms. They are the ones defining the terms, and this is a problem. We need to regain these things. We need to take back the meanings of a lot of the word, like the word jihad. We need to take back the meaning of the word jihad. Right? Can we please, Mike, note there's a noise that's coming from the mic, one of the mics. So we need to reclaim these words. We need to reclaim what does discipline mean. There's obviously a very controversial verse in Surah An-Nisa, فَضْرِبُهُنَّ, verse 34, right? So hit them, and it's about wives, about the man, the husband, and it's a very controversial. I'm sure if I open this topic, it's going to be a huge thing. But the word has been abducted by Orientalists and non-Muslims who are trying to hurt Islam to be abused and to be equal to what we see in the West and how, you know, what husbands do to wives and how they beat them and abuse and all that. And this has pushed a lot of Muslim scholars to reinterpret the verse and to change the meaning of the Quran, which is a huge problem. And I don't want to get into that, but it's just an example, right? Abuse does not equal discipline. And discipline does not equal abuse. Abuse is dhulm. And dhulm dhulumat yawm al-qiyamah. Allah will punish people for dhulm. Be it husband, be it father, be it mother, whoever it is, Allah will punish people for dhulm. And abuse is dhulm. Don't worry about people leaving joy. It's very challenging. Okay, at home. Okay, I understand. Okay. It's not the leaving and joining issue, but I have to put settings not showing on the screen. It's a distraction. Okay. Right, a lot of you identify with that story of the scholar, right? With the mom, mashallah. At 17, how do you discipline a teenage girl who wants to leave home to live with her best Western friends? You don't allow her. You do not allow her. She's still in your house. She's still part of your family. You do not allow her, because this is pretty much direct destruction. She is going towards destruction. Why does she want to leave to go away from home to live with the Western friends? Because she's been conditioned by what she's seen, that it's like this nice life, you can go, you know, this is not. You cannot. You do not allow her. She's still part of your household. She's still under your care, especially a girl. She's your responsibility till later, even if she's mature. The father is responsible for this woman, even if she's 30, 40 years old, 50 years old, and the father is still alive. He is responsible for her till she gets married. When she gets married, she becomes the responsibility of her husband. If she gets divorced, the responsibility goes back to her father and to her brother, to the wali. Okay? There's no such thing as she's just free. Okay? Not for the woman. I'm sorry to say this. Because people will abuse her, because she will not be able to do it. She thinks she might be, but she won't. So do not allow her. Do not allow her. Talk to her, get someone to talk to her, get some counseling, understand why and this and that. What are the problems? There might be reasons. We need to dig in to see why this 17-year-old want to leave the home. Okay, how the relationship can be mended. But there'll be a huge mistake for the parents to allow this girl to leave. She is the responsibility of the father till the end. He cannot, you know, now she's 17, she's a woman, to beat her or anything like that. I mean, this is something incorrect. But, you know, living in a Muslim country, this is where authorities would be able to interfere. The problem is that we don't have an Islamic system. In an Islamic country, the authorities, right now she can go to the police if you stop her from leaving. In an Islamic system, the police would not allow her to leave. And the judicial system would not allow her to just leave and go with some non-Muslims and this and that. It wouldn't happen. Do you understand why we're suffering from not having a Muslim system? Because everything is against us. It's not conducive for Islam. Everything is fighting against us. And we are just, it's like people are bombing us, right, with bombs, and we are shooting, arrows. If we're shooting arrows, I mean, arrows can even cause damage. I think we're just, shooting nerve, those nerve guns, the little foam little bullets. That's what we're doing, right? That's the only way we're able to shoot back now. So it is a big problem, guys. It's a big problem. We need to take lead. We need to network. How do we solve these problems? I'll tell you now, just for we have just a few more minutes for tomorrow, as we're going to discuss, inshallah, what are some of the parenting issues that are coming to me as you said, girls wanting to leave the home, girls wanting to be with boys, not even married. Forget about it. Girls, if parents come to me today and they say, well, my girl wants to get married, she fell in love with this boy, I can work with that. But most of the girls or the boys want to just have a girlfriend, boyfriend. A lot of the girls want to have girlfriends and have girlfriends, if you know what I mean. And the boys have boyfriends. So a lot of this lesbian and gay stuff is happening a lot. And I have to deal with these cases. Cases of depression. Our children are depressed. Suicide. Kids are cutting themselves. Okay, they're starting slowly with just small cuts, but kids are slowly cutting themselves. In Malaysia last year, there was about 5,000 babies that were abandoned on streets. The 1 year, only 1 year, guys. So now the government's coming up with some system of how to abandon your kids if you want to abandon, because people just leave it by trash cans and stuff like that, right? Because of rape, because of pregnancies, and so on. Kids are on drugs, okay? Kids are addicted to drugs, to alcohol. I'm dealing with these cases. Abuse. I have a few cases of abuse from parents, guys. Sometimes from parents, okay? Abuse of boys or girls, young girls, and this causes a lot of problems. And when I'm talking about abuse, some is sexual abuse, okay? So why, when I look into these cases as to why, it is because of the culture, the loss of morality, the media that we're seeing, the hyper-sexualized society that we're living, and that we're allowing to develop without standing against it. We are not fighting against it. We are just living day by day, getting along, talking about this rubbish of having a multicultural society. There's nothing wrong. We have no issues with Indians or Chinese or whites or blacks or browns or anyone else. We have no problem with their colors or their nationality or their ethnicity. We have no problem whatsoever. We Muslims have no problem with blacks or whites or Chinese or Indians or Americans or Canadians or Romanians or Afghanistanis or Pakistanis or Uzbekistanis or anything. We have no problem with anyone. Welcome. We have a problem with no ethics and no morals, with evil that's causing people to lose themselves. This is what we have a problem. Can come from the Muslims, can come from the non-Muslim. We have a problem. We should have a problem with it. The problem is that we're not vocal enough. We're not getting to the people that can make a change. And because they're not hearing enough complaints, they're saying, well, I guess people don't care. We might as let it go through, It's gonna stop us or, save us a headache. Because if we want to fight it, we have to take it here, take it there. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of stuff. But the people don't complain. They don't care about it. It means they don't mind. So, us, democracy, right? The power of the people, whatever the people want. This is the danger. All right, guys, inshallah, we need to stop now. Anything else? Any last questions? One we can take, or any last statements? If not, then we stop, and then we'll see you, inshallah, tomorrow at the same time. I hope you benefited from the session. You understand the problems that we're faced. Tomorrow, we're going to try to get into, again, some of the issues and some of the solutions and how we can deal with it, and then hopefully finish with maybe some solutions and what we can do next. Okay? Yeah, during this MCO, we discovered many issues with our children, some escalated, some new, and some existing ones. It is overwhelming that I feel I'm losing them. Yes, and also I don't know how to handle the problem of younger ones effectively. Yes. Yeah, during the MCO was a blessing for a lot of people because they were able to spend more time with their families and to see some of the problems. And I've had a lot of parents coming to me. A lot of parents discovered certain issues and all because the privacy was not that easy anymore. They saw things, what the kids are watching, what the kids are doing, what they're talking about, because we spend so much more time with them. That's something that people have opened their eyes to, and we need to deal with these issues. So we're going to talk about that, inshallah. Okay, barakallahu fikum, jazakallah khair, and inshallah we'll see you tomorrow, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, okay? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
جزاك الله خير يا شيخ.